The Game Schooler podcast is a weekly audio show that educates new and experienced gamers about the awesomeness of tabletop gaming. In this week's episode, we'll cover Forever Home, our game of the week, discuss games and themes in the School of Gaming, and wrap it up by revealing our high five drafting games. Welcome to the Game Schooler podcast. I'm your host, Doug Kotecki, along with my co-host, Dr. Michael McCabe. How's it going, Michael?
Going great. How are you, Doug?
Oh, I can't complain. Doing pretty good.
Good.
Not much to follow up on for me. How about you?
Yeah, I've got a few things to follow up on. Number one, I'm gonna do just a little bit of a look back at some recent episodes. In episode 222, our game of the week was 3 chapters. And that game is fantastic. Well, my copy just arrived. Copies are now widely available all around North America. And the one thing I wanted to follow up on with folks that we didn't touch a whole lot on in the segment, we mentioned it, but there are slightly different rules for the 2-player and for the 3-player, but it doesn't really impact the game a whole lot. So just wanted to close the loop up with that one, that it's an awesome game. And I am so excited to get that one played, and it's just with the family here the next couple of days, maybe even tonight. And it's always interesting, Doug, when you learn the rules from playing the game versus reading the rules. So that was just one little thing. I've played the game a half dozen times with you, but thinking about, okay, how am I going to teach us? What are we going to do? And then saying, oh, if all 4 of us play, it's a slightly different rule set than if 3 of us play. So that's just, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the biggest difference is that there's some rules in the way that the drafting works in the main round, or in the first round, is the biggest and only difference between the play counts as far as, and then the only other part would be a kind of a dummy player in just 2-player games.
So in 2-player, there's a dummy player where you're throwing away 4 cards, and you're doing that twice. In 3-player, you actually play with 8 cards. If 4, 5, or 6 players, you're playing with 7 cards. So that's just some of those slight differences that I didn't even really know because I'd played the game. You know, I knew the 2 and 3 because that's where I'd played it a whole bunch. But I guess my point was it's interesting when you learn to play the game first and then have to go to the rules. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sometimes it can go of. Sometimes I find it like counterintuitive is not necessarily the right word, but it's like one of those things where it's like I know how to play the game, and the rules are telling me the exact same thing that I know how to play the game, but it's wording it in a different way. Yep. And sometimes it comes across and it's like, wait. Oh no, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that makes sense, but it's like not clear. It's amazing how much just like playing a game and having it taught to you can get a game up and running so much faster going forward than the rules of the book.
Yeah, that's also true. You know, repeated plays of playing. And then just one other quick thing to follow up on. We interviewed not that long ago. That's what I was like, right before 3 chapters, we interviewed Manny Tremblay, and it's already, the end of May already when that one posted. But my copy of Roth arrived, WROTH, and I am excited to get that one to the table. It looks gorgeous. So just congratulations to Manny Tremblay, and it's published by Chip Theory. I likely won't be pushing this one on you because it is an area control game. It's really a king of the hill game on a beautiful neoprene mat, but it is a game that I will be running at a convention, regional convention of ours, Gamehole Con, which is just a few months away, if you can believe that. It's not that far away. So it's kind of nice when one of those games arrive and it's ooh, this does really look nice. So
yeah, Kickstarter or thing that you're actually excited about by the time it actually shows up is, and then can be an anomaly. A lot of times I get stuff and it shows up and it's like, wait, why was I really excited about this one again? Trying to get that hype back. Sometimes it doesn't come back.
Yeah.
So
well, and when we had him on the show, he said, and I don't think we were recording, but I was asking about it. And he said, yeah, it'll probably be there in the next month or so. And he was right. So
yeah. All right. Anything else to follow up on?
No, nothing in follow up.
So one of the things that I wanted to share that has been awesome, and I don't know if I occasionally we'll talk about it, but it bears repeating that we have slowly been making our way through the Role Player Adventures campaign. And we haven't featured it as a game of the week. We haven't featured it as a spotlight, and it's one that we just kind of plunk away at. And I just wanted to bring it up because it's an awesome system. There is a Kickstarter that the day that this episode airs, right now, immediately stop the podcast and go. There will be
hours,
a little,
Doug. They have hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there'll be a late pledge. Some of those cutoff things anymore are somewhat arbitrary, but
yeah.
They do have kind of an expansion, an extra scenario that they're working on. So if you've played Role Player Adventures and you're interested in more content, there is more content available. If you haven't played Role Player Adventures, go over to that Kickstarter page just to kind of nose around and see what the system is about and see if it's something that might work for you and your group. But we've really had a blast going through it. Now, I can't guarantee that our buddy Dan can come over to your house and GM the whole system like he does for us.
Where you have to tell him to slow down. I'm still processing the dice rolls.
But maybe maybe he will. I don't know.
My role playing is just pretending that every dice roll that I throw is amazing. That's my contribution to the group. Look how well I rolled those dice.
It was.
I wasn't faking anything last night. Those were some pretty good rolls.
Exactly.
The cool thing about this campaign, and I got to give Keith Mateka and Thunderworks a lot of credit here because they're trying new, innovative ways. Right? Is that there's like a $15 download pledge for the PDF only. And when I first saw it, I said, "Oh, they're just trying to save money. They're just trying to get around the tariff, blah blah blah," which could be true. But then when actually looking at the campaign, you can download that to a tablet, you can download that to a laptop, and you have that add-on adventure, and print off the map at a Walgreens and laminate it, and you're good to go. Unless you're fortunate to have a nice color printer or a friend with a color printer, then have Doug print it off and laminate, and you're good to go. But then for $10 more, you can get the actual physical pledge. So I thought it was a very affordable add-on and expansion as well. So nice to see if they're continuing to support that.
All right. What else for you, Michael?
That's all that I really had. I had those two items to follow up on. I'm ready to jump in and talk games.
All right. Well, our spotlight this week is Jewels for the Emperor Penguin. This came out in 2024 from Left Justified Studio. The designer is Shane F.F. Carr, and the artists are Kenzie Lindau and Josh Nelson. 2 to 4 players, about 35 to 45 minutes to play. This is a family game. In the icy cliffs of the Valley of the Emperor Penguin, your waddle of penguins is on a sparkling mission. In Jewels for the Emperor Penguin, you lead a guild of 5 penguins, climbing and sliding across a frozen hex grid to collect dazzling gems and craft jewelry for His Majesty's delight, racing to earn the most points. Each player starts with 5 penguins, numbered 1 through 5, 3 dice, and a secret guild icon for bonus scoring. On your turn, you'll roll your dice and choose one to move its matching penguin to an adjacent hex, diagonally up or down or sliding straight down, but never straight up the icy slope. Anytime a penguin slides down the valley walls, they immediately collect the bonus gems shown below it. If you land on the same space with one of your lower numbered penguins, you can bump them to another space. For example, a number 5 penguin could bump a number 3 penguin if it landed on the penguin 3's space. You can continue to bump penguins as long as the penguin being bumped has a lower number than the newly arriving penguin. After all of the bumping, activate the last tile that one of your penguins moved to. Each tile has an active ability for the newly arriving penguin and a secondary ability for any other penguins also occupying that space. The active player then has an opportunity to buy an objective card by paying its cost in gems. Each objective card belongs to 2 of the 6 penguin guilds, which will score bonus points if they match your secret penguin guild determined at the start of the game. Lastly, the player rolls the dice that they used to move their penguin and adds it back to their supply. Then play passes to the next player. The game end is triggered when a player claims their 5th jewelry card and gains the Emperor's Grateful Thanks card. Players score points from jewelry cards, secret guild bonuses, and the Emperor's Thanks. And the player with the most victory points wins. Can your penguins craft a glittering legacy for the Emperor, or will you slip and slide into icy obscurity? So that is how you play Jewels for the Emperor Penguin. What are your thoughts on this one, Michael?
But before I get into the game, I got to give you some credit here, Doug. That was some exceptional copy. If you created that on your own, I know you didn't feed that into any artificial intelligence aggregator bot. So well done. Really good description.
You. Yeah.
Now getting back to the game, I really like the conversions that happen in the game.
Yep.
And you can just kind of amass what looks to be a ton of the gems. The gems are cute, and then you have to figure out a way. Okay, so I am now sitting with 12 of the red ones. What am I going to do with them to fulfill that contract, and figuring out where the slide is going to happen so you can get back down to the market, right? It's not just about the climb and the bumping. I've got to be able to get back down so that I can convert some of these to then go get a contract before somebody else does. So I like the conversion and the race aspect of the game. There's a lot of other different aspects that are happening in the game. For me, though, that's just one aspect that I really enjoy.
Yeah, I was looking at some comments on this game, and there was one that was actually a negative comment, but I thought it was a very apt description of this, which is a combination of Chutes and Ladders meets Splendor, which is kind of accurate.
Yeah.
You're moving up and down across the grid, sliding down to collect extra stuff. If you like conversions and combos and that whole type of Splendor thing, you will like this game and it'll work for you. I can see this game being bland for folks that don't like that as well. But it looks great on the table. And the two things I really like is I like figuring out what's funny.
Go.
Is I like trying to figure out how to make that combo, to cascade and get my penguins to bump into one another, to have kind of a super turn that I can have 2 or 3 penguins sliding down on a single round because I've laid it out perfectly to bump into one another and do those type of things. And another part of that I really enjoy is that I like that your dice don't reset. The only die that you re-roll every turn is the die that you just used to move that penguin. So it gives you a little bit, it's not like you're rolling every round your dice and you go, wow, what can I do? You can plan a little bit because you know 2 of the 3 dice, and maybe you get an opportunity to roll and get the penguin that you just used and move that one as well. So it's kind of a tricky thing of a perfect combination of randomness and control that I really enjoy about that.
Yeah, and I wanted you to finish your thought. That the paraphrase from that I'm going to read the full direct quote, Doug, because that person gave him a 3. Okay, yeah. I think this game is a lot better than a 3, but my opinion. I'm not going to read the direct quote. It's mean. No, I think you're right. You know, if you take the good things of Chutes and Ladders and which is the bumping, but you actually get to bump up and potentially get more resources.
Sliding down.
Yeah, right. But the sliding down, you're doing to yourself. You're not punishing somebody else.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. Oh, you think you're going to get 100? Well, here's 97 back to 92.
Yeah.
And then the Splendor comparison, I think, is also apt. That's a good little connection there.
I think it looks really good on the table.
Oh man.
I do it. Like I said, it is one of those where it's like the theme is there, but it's not. This is not necessarily a game that I think people are going to get because they love the theme and that it's really going to work out great. It's about the combos and that efficiency and trying to fulfill contracts. It's much more of a Euro-y style game wrapped up in a fun family package. But it works with families. I don't want to make it sound like this is a big, heavy game. This is a family game. But it has Euro elements that if you didn't have that fun, fancy, slick artwork theme on top of it, could be pretty dry.
Yeah, and to your point of a family game, I mean, my nephew picked this game off the shelf as one that he wanted to play out of all the games in our house. So the box art and the sense of penguins and board games, it's definitely, the game is attempting to be played by families.
Yeah.
And pretty easy to get up and running as well. So, yeah.
All right. So that is our spotlight this week. Jewels for the Emperor Penguin. Before we move on, I want to remind everybody to watch, subscribe, and like the YouTube channel. That is at Game Schooler U. Spread the word about the podcast and leave a review on the platform of your choice. We would appreciate that. And if you have any questions or comments, reach out to us. Email at gameschooler.com. Now let's move on to the game of the week.
The game of the week. The game of the week is an in-depth look at a family-friendly game we think you should try if you get the chance. This week's game is Forever Home, designed by Lottie Hazel and Jack Hazel. Art by Dan May and Dominique Vassie. Published by Birdwood Games. A 2023 release, playtime of 20 to 45 minutes, 1 to 5 players, ages 8+. This is the design duo's second game of the week. Doug, give us an overview.
Welcome to the world of wagging tails and the hopeful eyes awaiting their forever homes. In Forever Home, you're a dedicated shelter worker arranging colorful pups on your board to complete training puzzles and match them with loving families to earn the most reputation points. Each player starts with a shelter board, 2 training cards, and a few dog tokens from a starting draft. Over several rounds, players take 2 actions per turn. You can grab a dog tile from the center pool and place it on your shelter board, snag another training card, or move 1 dog tile 1 space to tweak your patterns. Training cards show specific dog arrangements, like 2 of the same colored pups with an empty space between them, or diagonal path of alternating colored dogs. Complete a training card on your turn to score its points and move dogs from your shelter to a home, boosting endgame scoring. There are 4 different types of homes: cities, suburbs, countryside, and foster homes, and each home scores differently according to home cards drawn at the start of the game. Players also compete for commendations by rehoming and training specific dog colors marked by adorable wooden meeples on the commendation board. The game ends when one player competes 7 training cards, with everyone getting equal turns. Tally your points from training cards, home cards, and commendations, and the player with the most reputation wins. Can you find every pup a perfect home, or will your shelter dreams stay in the doghouse? So that is a brief overview of Forever Home. What do you like about this one, Michael?
I like how fun it is. I like the accessible puzzle. The game is very easy and straightforward to teach. You basically run a demo turn and say, hey, on the 7th card completed, you're going to get equal turns and the game's over. So let's talk about how you complete these cards and what it actually means. And then you can just take a little trip around the different areas. The decision that I love to show people and kind of talk through is what happens when you graduate a dog. Graduating the dogs is a great little planning step for completing other training contracts and just showing, when you graduate a dog, one, maybe two of the dogs are going to then leave your training space and go to one of the 4 homes. We just played this game recently in our house. 4 of us did. And it was fun. It was fun to get out to the table. It was fun to teach. It was fun to see my kids take it in. It's hard to believe that's been 2 years since we reviewed Dog Park. And so I'm glad that Birdwood and Lottie and Jack Hazel are continuing to make games and publish games. And I'm going to send it back to you in just 1 second, but we're almost a year from when we picked up this game. We got this game at Gen Con 2024 and talking to Jack Hazel among the other thousands of people that did to him during Gen Con. So I'm not going to say like he could even recognize who we are. But he said, this is a very different game than Dog Park. I mean, that was one of the first things that he said. And it is. It's a quicker game. It's an abbreviated game. There's a littler puzzle and a smaller package, but it's fun. I mean, so those are the things I like about it. How about you, Doug?
I mean, I like the and this is a common theme for a lot of games that I enjoy, but I do enjoy the balancing of in-game and end-game scoring, and that idea of there are some cards that help, there are some training cards that help me rehome dogs quicker, but maybe they don't score me very many points from the training cards. But there are some other training cards that score me a lot of points, but they're going to take several rounds to complete. And so balancing that kind of, should I be pushing the end game or keep it going? How can I spread it out? Those decisions in a game are really enjoyable to me. As far as whenever I'm playing a game or reviewing a game, I'm always looking for, it reminds me of, when we had Chris Leader and those guys on a couple weeks ago, where it's like looking for the fun. It's like, where's the fun? Where are the awesome turns? Where am I getting enjoyment from the game? And for this game, there is an excitement whenever it's almost like, who's coming into the shelter next? There's an excitement when new dogs get pulled out of that bag, when new training cards come out. And they're happening every round, every turn. People are usually taking those actions, and it's like, ooh, I hope a blue dog comes out. I hope a blue one, or ooh, I might be able to complete that training card. That one's going to be perfect for me. And so there's an excitement when other people are taking their turns because of what it may present to you on your turn, and that really
excitement
fun.
Also exists on your turn, because when you get 2 actions on your turn. So if I choose to draft one of the dogs into my training yard, I immediately reveal another dog from the bag and see what comes out. Same thing with the cards. So I do enjoy that as well. In the 20 to 45 minutes that you're playing, especially if you're playing with a family, there is not a lot of downtime. And so if you have a squiggly kid or an active kid or a kid who kind of dances while they play games, you're going to be telling them, no, it's already your turn. It is your turn. It is your turn. The game has a really nice move or flow to it. The pace is excellent. The other thing that I really enjoy about this game is that multiple cards can get completed on the same turn. And so...
And trying to do that is fun.
Yes. And so I might be intentionally sitting one card behind so that I can time that end game. Now, probably not the nicest thing to do when I'm playing with my family on the first, teaching and learning game, but we do like to dominate teaching and learning games here at the Game Schooler podcast. But if you're playing with your game group or with people, that hobby level who play a lot of games, I do think that that's another fun feature of the game, is kind of when to push for that end game. And that's typically a trait that's going to be in games that run 1 to 2 hours, right? With a variable endpoint. But you get that in a 20 to 45 minute game here. Yeah,
or a game that is clearly designed to race to the end. Yes. So it's like either two ends of the spectrum is like, this clearly is a race game, so try and finish everything as fast as possible, or it's a longer game and you got to try and figure out the right time to end it. This one lands right in the middle.
Right in the middle. Yep.
And then as far as production, the artwork is very on point with the artwork that's in Dog Park. It's beautiful dog illustrations, really well done. Michael mentioned that it's in a smaller box, so it's doesn't take it. There's a lot of game in a smaller box. Anything else from you on production?
Oh no, I just think it's great. Each dog is represented by a little screen printed wooden token or dog meeple. Everything fits back together nicely. It's sometimes with drafting chips out of bag, things can get fiddly, but I didn't find that in my recent play with Forever Home. I was trying to be critical because I knew the game. I'd played the game, and just didn't have anything to really nitpick at it,
Yeah. And Michael mentioned too that this is the same publisher. It's themed around dogs, but it is a very different game from Dog Park. So this is a much lighter, approachable game that plays quicker. The other thing I also want to say that if it's not clear already, this is more of an abstract game with a fun theme. This very well could have been any other type of theme. There's a lot of spatial elements to this game that could be done with just random colored pieces and things like that. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing that it's dogs. I think it's great, but it is more of an abstract-y feel for a game.
And I think without that, though, I'm going to rephrase that, okay? By having that abstract-y feel, this game is 8+. This is accessible and a game that you could play with kiddos going all the way down to 8. And they kind of get that. It feels like other games. You know? Okay, and now I have to take one of these dogs, or no, I have to take 2 of the dogs, but I put them into the same home. I'm going to put them in the country because anytime that I put pairs together in the country, I'm going to score 3 points. So that will give me 3 points.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically the talk aloud. That wasn't me playing this past weekend. That was my 9-year-old.
Yeah.
So I
don't want to say that as a negative.
I wasn't saying that you were saying it was negative. I was
Yeah.
just jumping into what you were saying, and,
Yeah.
and I probably took it in a different direction. But you're right. It's not an engine builder. You're not an efficiency puzzle. It's with some nice little end game bonuses though too that I think really do make it work for the gamers in the crowd. And so some things I found myself always trying to stay one turn ahead, and that certainly wasn't my approach in the first few teaching and learning games I played with you or when we played with your kiddo.
Yeah. So what kind of skills are in this game?
Yeah, well, I think it's obvious, but because it's obvious, I wanted to make sure that I at least got it in here. And there's spatial perception. It's not one that I've talked about frequently or often recently, but deciding which dog is going to leave the training yard and which dog or dogs will stay behind and how you're going to get that to work into fulfilling other contracts is kind of a mix of spatial perception with a little bit of strategic thinking. Not a lot of it, but a little bit in a great way that I think shines in repeated plays. That will not be obvious in that initial play. But similar to a game like Dream Home, which we've covered in the past, where the more you play it, the more you kind of figure out how to use your little 5x5 grid, right? And how I'm going to beat what contracts can I fulfill and what can I just not get away with. So those are 2 skills right away for me. How about you?
Yeah, I think one that is interesting is personal responsibility. I think it's one that improves over plays, which is that first time through, you put a dog down and a little bit later you realize, I wish I'd put that in a different spot. And don't get me wrong, the action of moving a dog one space over can be a game changer if you do it at the right time to, potentially fulfill a couple cards at once. However, you don't want to rely on it. It's one of those things where it's like, if it's very beneficial for you, you can, but you also don't want to waste a whole bunch of turns moving dogs around that if you had just played them in the right spot the first time or taken a different dog to rehome and leave the other one back in training. So I think there is.
I think the rule book even calls that out to a point. Has a little bump out where it mentions that. But yeah,
yeah, and so I know playing the first time with my my middle daughter, she had some things where it was like at the end of the game you could tell her wheels were spinning of like, yeah, now I know where and how I could have done that better. Where she had kind of like had a dog out in the corner that she was never fulfilling. And like could never get it to work as part of anything. And it's like, oh, that's a dog that was kind of wasted. I should have put them in a different place. So I think the personal responsibility is a big one. And then part of that is also the observation of looking around the board and seeing the patterns that people are making on their board are not complicated. Yeah. So it's fairly easy to look around the board and see, oh, I've got a pretty good idea of what kind of pattern Michael's trying to make. And not that you're hate drafting of like, I'm going to take that dog so he can't get it, but more of, I might take that objective card before him if I can kind of complete that too. And being aware of what other people are kind of looking for and what kind of sets they might need to complete. So I think observation is a good one, and it's approachable in a way that it's not overly complicated. You can see what other people are doing, which I think for a skill for younger players, when we're talking about observation, that's what we're talking about. It's stuff that can be observed without a lot of mental overhead.
Well, and I would also say that skill is essential in repeated plays. If you want to have fun playing Forever Home, you're going to need to learn to look around the board and see. And this brings me to my last skill, but that's goals. See what the goals are, because the points are so tight. The first game that Doug and I played, the first game I ever played was with Doug and one of his kids, and it was 31 to 30 to 30. Yeah. This past weekend, the game that I played, I had 28, then my wife had 25, one of my kids had 22, another one of my kids had 23. So knowing how those goals work and just knowing where to focus. Am I going to try to have the most dogs left out in my training board, or am I going to try to, get the points from the city and the points in the suburb? That's a critical piece to scoring well. But I'll also say this. I don't think it's necessary for a lot of the younger gamers. This is a game that makes kids feel like they're smart and clever just by the actions that they're taking, because no matter what they're doing, they're going to get some points and they're going to graduate some dogs. Yeah. So,
yeah. Even we have daughters, so that could skew it a little bit, but the idea of like, I sent this dog to a good home. Like that is just as much of a goal playing with my kids as it is of I won the game and I scored a bunch of points. Mm-hmm. They're accomplishing that mini goal throughout the game. I also think this is a great game for concentration, a game that encourages players to focus their attention or efforts on a task. I mentioned it a little bit when you're talking about when those new dogs and new training cards are coming out. But there is an attention and a focus that happens in this game where kids and players are focused on their shelter board and how they can manipulate it and what dogs they need and what training cards they need in order to meet their goals. And I think there's a level of concentration that's required in order to do that. So I think that's another skill that's in there. Anything else before we move on to final thoughts, Michael?
No.
What are your thoughts?
Well, my final thoughts are right now at the time of this recording, this game is readily available in North America for $15 to $20. And we don't always talk about that as much as we did when we first started the show.
Sure.
I am shocked by how much game is in that box for the price point that it's at right now today.
Yeah,
I think I think that Forever Home is a game that can fit in a classroom, in a house, and can be played with a wide range of audiences. Those are my final thoughts.
Yeah, I've got something very similar. I think it's a great mix of two awesome mechanisms of set collection and tile placement while you're balancing multiple scoring opportunities and trying to time that end game perfectly.
Yep.
But to tie into what you said, I think this is a great fit for thinky gamers that love to optimize and family gamers looking for a quick casual experience. But what's unique about it is that both of them can play at the same time without slowing the game down, which is pretty rare that you could have somebody really playing hardcore, in-depth, I want a chunky, thinky game and fire off 3 cards at once in a massive turn and be playing with a 9-year-old kid and the game's not slowing down. There's not that much mental processing in the turns. The turns go fast, so you don't have somebody like, oh, what should I pick? What should I pick? It moves. So the idea that you could play with those two very different types of gamers is at the same time without adversely affecting the game is pretty unique. So that is our game of the week, Forever Home from Birdwood Games.
The School of Gaming. In the School of Gaming, we discuss concepts, keywords, etiquette, and helpful ideas in the world of gaming. This week, we ask, does every game need a theme?
It's a great question, Michael. What do you think?
Doug, you
Yes.
asked this question, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Possibly. I don't know. We
Oh,
do
we
our
put it on
we
the
do
sheet
our
so-
run
6
sheet
months
so
ago?
long ago. I have no
Okay.
idea.
So,
Sounds like a question I
yeah.
might ask.
It does. It really does. My answer is nope. But it helps with teaching a game. It helps me with repeated plays and returning to games.
Yeah.
So, some of the oldest games first games that I've ever played growing up, they don't have themes. Chess is not war. Chess is chess. But the games that are thematic, that bring about fun and engagement and excitement and allow me to play in a certain role, those are games that I tend to come back to and gravitate back towards. And they are also games that help me introduce them to other people much easier. How about you?
I don't think so. I mean, obviously, there are a bunch of abstract games that have absolutely no theme whatsoever, and they can be just as enjoyable. I do agree with you 100% that a good theme can make a game easier to teach, for sure. I think there is kind of this no man's land, though, in that there is a game that has too many rules to be an abstract, right? So if you're going to have a game like chess or I think about the Jigamic, like wood style, like Quarto and things like that, where it's like dark pieces and light pieces and fancy wood and things like, they usually have a very, very simple rule set.
Crokinole.
So it's like, yeah, what happens when you get too many rules to be one of those elegant abstract games, but not enough rules that there are thematic ties to a mechanism to have it make sense, right? And that's where I think sometimes it falls in a crack, because you talk about a game like Rock Hard 1977 that's dripping with theme. The mechanisms line up to what you're doing, makes it easier to teach and stuff like that. And then there are other games where it's like, this is simpler, but there's still too many rules to be a basic, it's like not like Connect 4 or things like that. And it kind of makes me wonder, is there a difference between, and we would play those games and be like, all right, I guess it's set in 1920s Chicago, but really we're just doing whatever, And so it makes me wonder, is there a difference between artwork and theme?
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, do publishers add, quote, themes in order to add unique artwork to fill in that gap of there are too many rules for it to be a straight abstract, but it's not thematic enough that it's like, well, okay, yeah, you're doing this quote, whatever it is. And I'm just kind of wondering if that's when we talk about like, oh, that's a pasted on theme.
Yeah,
it's like,
that's where I was gonna go.
do we really just mean, well, it's got artwork that puts it in a universe, but there's nothing thematically tying to, and I'm trying to wonder if there's a difference between art and theme or setting of a game and thematic games. Like, are those two separate things, but sometimes they get smashed together and people say, oh, that's a pasted on theme or it doesn't exist. But it's like, well, maybe it's not trying to be a theme. It's a setting or artwork, a presentation, as opposed to you're a swashbuckling pirate in and in creating a world. Are those two separate things, do you think?
Oh, wow. You went a whole lot of places there, Doug.
Per usual.
No. I mean, there's a lot there. So about 3 minutes ago, I was going to say, the hobby has something for artwork over a theme called pasted on, and then you gave a great description, mini lesson of what that actually means. Towards the end of what you were saying, I was thinking about games are often designed in isolation by people around the world. So if you want to get one of the best artists, you might have to get an Ian O'Toole who lives in Australia. You might have to get a Kwanchai Moria who lives in the United States. You might have to get an Andrew Bosley who lives in a different part of the United States, but your publishing house, is spread out. And then, oh, by the way, your designer also lives in Australia or also, lives in Germany. And I think that sometimes that can lend itself to a little bit of a disconnect where the theme can break down because you've got, that artist and this publisher, almost like there are themes within board games sometimes within the hobby. For me, it's not just about the mechanics. Sometimes it's also about the keywords and the actions that are happening in the game. One game, and that's where I think there are companies that do a great job tying in their theme. I think Days of Wonder is one, and even Amigo does a great job with their 5 rules or less. Well, within that 5 rules or less, you better be able to explain what the game is and have some sort of theme to be able to sell it. So there are companies that seem to really blend the theme with the mechanics, with the keywords, with the actions in a great way.
I mean, sometimes I feel like and maybe this is my question, I feel like, do we as gamers use the term theme too broadly to represent more than what it actually is?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. What is the proper term for the elements of the mechanisms of what you're doing in Rock Hard 1977 matching up with the setting perfectly compared to just a game that's in a setting but nothing, and people would use theme for both of those.
Yeah, because
right?
People have blended theme with experience, with the experience you're going to get within the game and the experience and feeling you're going to have after the game. Rock Hard 1977 and Draft and Write Records, I think, are two very different games, but games where the theme makes you feel like you did something, that you are in that universe. And I think the incongruence comes in where people will describe, this is a pirate themed game. And it's like, not really.
Yeah.
I mean, there's cards with anthropomorphic pirates on it, but I don't feel very piratey when I play it.
Yeah. So is it instead of theme, is it experiential? The idea that a game like Splendor, when we were talking about Jules the Emperor Penguin, or for the Emperor Penguin, we were talking about Splendor a little bit and sharing things. And it's like, you're a gem dealer and you're doing that. And it's like, while you're playing the game, you don't feel like a gem dealer. You feel like you're collecting things and making it. So it's like, it has the setting in the world of being a gem dealer, but nothing that you're doing is experiential, experiencing anything close to what that would be like, as opposed to the games that you talked about where it's like, oh, I do feel like I'm a road manager, and I do feel like I'm a rock star in a band, or in Scarface 1920, I feel like I'm in charge of this gang, and I feel like I'm the boss.
Yeah.
And so it's like, is there a difference? Is that what the difference is? That experiential aspect of it, and maybe that being part of the theme?
Yeah, I think so. I think the other thing that happens, sometimes the actions in the game are so darn fun that the game doesn't actually need a theme. And I'm thinking now about Flip 7. The theme of that is the mechanism of pushing your luck. I mean, that is the theme. And you know what? That's the game. So that's kind of my answer. If someone were to really force this, every game needs a theme. You can still have a really fun game that is a game that doesn't have a theme.
And at a certain point, it would become more ridiculous if you opened up the rule book for Flip 7 and it said, you're an underwater deep sea explorer. And like creating this whole world of, it's like, I'm just pressing my luck for numbers. So that type of thing where it's like, not every game needs a theme. It's where it becomes kind of where it transfers to, not every game needs a theme. Some games have pasted on settings and themes all the way up to where does it become an experiential and everything kind of clicking together. Do you have a preference for one, or are they both, a well-done Flip 7 is equal to a well-done Rock Hard 1977? Are those on the same page for you?
I think for me, they are. To answer your question succinctly, they are. But that's just for me if I'm going to a game night or if I'm going to a convention to sit down and play a bunch of games. That's not how the hobby exists for me right now, though. I need to be prepared to teach games. I need to be able to be prepared to show games to people who may not know that these games exist. Yeah. So the theme helps tremendously, like I said at the top end of the segment, with teaching the game and then the repeated plays, getting me to return to the game. Oh, you're gonna feel like a pirate in Pirates Cove. Yeah, you're gonna feel like you're doing some pretty awesome exploring. You want to feel like you're in the circus? We're gonna play Three Ring Circus, right? So that theme does help when presenting games to others for the first time.
Yeah, attracting folks to the table. It can make a big difference. Just a
gamer? No, man, I don't need it. How about you?
No, I mean, to me, it comes down to, I definitely enjoy games that have, I definitely enjoy the experiential games where I feel like what I'm supposed to be doing in the game is how I feel while I'm playing the game. I love those experiences. But that's not to say, like, I also love a really tight game that's well developed, that works seamlessly, like Century Spice Road. It's like, do I feel like a spice trader? Am I getting that experience? No, but I love that game, so I don't necessarily favor one over the other. I guess the commonality between the two of those ends of the spectrum are they're both really well designed games. Yeah. And a really well designed game can stand up without a theme, and it can stand up with a theme. I'm just seeking that out, and of course the theme may or may not draw me personally to the table. It's not like I picked up Century Spice Road because I'm like, I am such a huge fan of turmeric, guys. I got to get my hands on this game.
Paprika's mine, Doug.
Yeah, so it's not like that is seeking me out and called me whispering from the game shelf. So I think it's a little bit of both, but I think ultimately it comes down to, is the game well designed and fun for me, right?
Well, and that's where you're spot on. And I got to agree with you. And I'll wrap this up because we could keep talking about this for another 3 hours. But we're fortunate where we have quite a few game stores in our area.
Yeah.
And one of those game stores is Noble Knight. And Noble Knight is in right outside Madison, Wisconsin. And it claims to be the world's largest board game store. And if you walk in there, the thing that will stand out, they've got a lot of games that have just one or maybe two copies, but a lot of games on the floor. And when I start to walk around, it's like, ooh, some of this, it can go from being fun to feeling like Singularity, the board game, pretty quickly.
Yep.
So I think like a well-designed game, that's the key. And people, publishers, companies, designers that are just theme searching, that's where I get lost and sometimes frustrated because I feel like I was sold something. I was sold an experience that didn't really come through in the design.
Yeah.
So I'm wary of that right now when I look to acquire a game, whether that's through trade or buying, kind of something I'm conscious of.
Yeah. Well, and certainly there are all those trends that come and go of either mechanisms or
Cozy.
Ooh, that was a really popular game. So now we're going to make 8 billion of these, regardless of whether the game actually fits it or not. So
cozy, crunchy, cute, kind.
Yeah. There you go. So let us know your thoughts in the Discord. I'd love to hear what you guys think about theme setting, experiences, which ones cater to you, and whether that's a requirement or not. Every week, Michael and I highlight a list of games we want to play, enjoy, or spread the word about, and everybody loves lists. And this week, we're going to be taking a look at our favorite drafting games, which for me could have been my top 25.
Yeah.
I didn't even really look that hard. There's probably a bunch that I'm missing. I kind of had a go-to ones. I have a list of 7 or 8 honorable mentions, some which you may talk about. The one caveat that I did kind of settle on as far as things that were on the edge was the main function of the game needed to be drafting.
Okay.
So there are some games that I really enjoy that are really awesome, but drafting is just one part of the game that I kept off the list, and I'll mention those if they come up. But not to say that I would say, those couldn't be on the list. It was just something where I wanted the main mechanism throughout the game to be drafting. In the same way that people have like deck building in a game, but the whole game is not deck building.
Right. No, that's good. Did you go back and listen to episode 27 in July of 2021 when we did this last time?
No, I did not.
I did not either. And I meant to, Doug. I just didn't get around to it. So I might have some crossover from then. What my main thing was one, I didn't want to highlight games that we've talked about in the last 10 weeks. So that ruled out 3 chapters. That ruled out. We play a lot of games with drafting. Yeah. And I also didn't want to just use games that have draft and pass cards. Some of that closed drafting. Although some of the games on my list have that, I wanted to look at drafting actions and different types of games and really approach drafting both wider and narrower at the same time. So we'll see how we do here.
Yeah. I know for sure that 2 of mine wouldn't have been on my list last time
because you had
all 5 of them have been games of the week, and I just could not avoid that. And I think to me, when I think of drafting, I think of the closed drafting. I know there are a bunch of other types, but to me, that reminds me of growing up in a sports household where my brothers and I were constantly drafting things.
Yep.
So let's have it. What's your number 5?
Number 5 for me is a game that was released in 2023 at Gen Con, and this publishing company went all out. Everyone was wearing Hawaiian shirts, and that is The Perfect Wave. And in The Perfect Wave, you are actually drafting the wave. So it's, but in The Perfect Wave, this is a tough one to describe here. So, where did my notes go? Okay. So, you're Playing tricks. Let me just try this again. I got too many tabs here, Doug. But the drafting part of the perfect wave is you're going to draft wave cards, and then you're going to. What are you actually doing in this one?
You're putting them out in order along your giant wave. You're putting tricks and number cards, and you're trying to make a little run of cards.
Yeah, and the timing of when you abort what you have drafted is a lot of fun. So this is a game that came out from the app, is published from the app, and designed by Jason Mowry and Chase Williams. Interesting little card game with some cool things happening in the box. It is wildly available out there in the world if you're looking to pick up a copy. I still have a copy here, and one that I want to get back to the table. Thanks for the assist there, Doug. Number 5 for me is Perfect Wave.
Wow, that's shocking. I did not realize that would be wouldn't even have been on my radar to pick for you. So interesting. My number 5 we talked about way back in episode 18, and that is Bunny Kingdom. From 2017, Yellow and designer Sir Richard Garfield. In Bunny Kingdom, you are drafting plots of land in order to expand your fiefdom and making them bigger and connecting big blocks together. One of the things I really enjoy about this game, which is, I don't know if it's unique to this game, but it is something that I remember this game for, which is you can kind of have like squatter's rights and say, I'm going to take this piece of property that will connect my two little kingdoms into one giant kingdom. But if somebody else gets that property later, I'm getting the boot, and my kingdom is splitting apart. So that idea of like taking that little bit of risk, and that card may not even show up in the game. There are so many cards in the deck. So I love the idea of taking that little risk and that idea of kind of area control and expanding your kingdom through the source of drafting. And that'll be a common theme throughout my list, which is various ways that you are using the cards that you draft. And this one is in a board in a little bit of an area control manner. So that's my number 5, Bunny Kingdom.
Awesome game. Haven't played that in 4.5 years. Time just moves. It's one like, I really want to play that again. Well, it's because I haven't played it in 4.5 years. That is fantastic game. Number 4 for me was a game of the week back in episode 140, and that's Disney Animated 2023. Prospero Hall design team, published by Funko Games. And in Disney Animated, you are drafting the actions that you're going to be able to take. So it's a cooperative. And when I put this list together, I wanted to bring up some different ways of looking at drafting and just deciding when you're going to take specific actions, how the group can benefit the most from them. And the other thing about Disney Animated, people are completing and upgrading their characters at different times. So it's one of those games where I may really, really want to be able to do something right now. But if Doug or somebody else at the table points out, actually, if you do that on your next turn, it might be more efficient for the whole group. So it's that idea of, I don't always get what I want in the draft. We can contribute to this draft together. Number 4 for me, Disney Animated.
All right. My number 4, I talked about last week. It was also my number 4 last week. So it didn't need to update my run sheet. And that's from episode 187. That is Comic Hunters. This one came out in North America in 2024 by Arcane Wonders and Spin Master. And what I like about Comic Hunters is that it is a wide variety of drafting. There is the select and pass type of drafting. There are cards laid out on a board that you are drafting and manipulating. And so essentially 4 different ways to collect cards through drafting. I think the only one that's not is an auction. But then getting those cards into your hand, and I'll talk about a game later that does this, but also it's like you're using cards that you drafted to pay for other cards that you've drafted, which is a really cool concept as well. So that is my number 4, Comic Hunters.
Awesome. Great game. This is number 3, might surprise Doug, but it might not surprise him at all. It's Blood Rage.
Yep.
Played it for the first time in person. Surprise or not surprise?
Not surprised.
Yeah, played it for the first time at a game day just a few months back. Been playing it on Board Game Arena a bunch, and in Blood Rage, it's a Viking themed game, so we'll just leave it at that to keep it PG, family friendly. Designed by Eric M. Lang, published by Cool Mini or Not, soon to be published in North America by Tabletop Tycoon. But there's an entire drafting phase, which is an actual phase of the game where you are assembling your cards for that round. So the game is played over 3 rounds, and so each round, at the beginning of the round, you're drafting a set number of cards that varies based on player count. And those cards that you take are critical for your strategy for the next round. You can carry over 1 card into a future round. The cards get more and more awesome in each round, though. So the cards that you see in the second round are superior, for the most part, to cards from the first round. But you could still develop a strategy where you're carrying over a card and you're kind of scaffolding a strategy together of how you want the next phase of the game to play out. The next phase is a worker placement sort of phase, and I just love how that draft and the worker placement work together. So that's my number 3, 2015's Blood Rage.
Yeah, it was one of the first ones I thought about, and because we'd played it recently, and this was one that I just didn't put on my list because of that. So it's a phase. I mean, it's really awesome, and this is one of the few games where you're drafting cards, and like every card is so awesome that it's hard to pick which one you want because they're all awesome in their own right. So it's in an honorable mention for me, but great choice and no begrudging of that being selected. My number 3, we talked about in episode 188, and that's Let's Go to Japan. This came out in 2024 from AEG and Josh Wood. What I like about Let's Go to Japan is it is a small draft. It's not a draft of a ton of cards. You are not getting a hand of 8 cards and picking one. You're getting 2 or 3 cards at a time and picking one and trying to figure out where you're immediately playing them, right? It's not a thing of like, oh, I'm going to hold on to this and I'll play it sometime later. It's like, no, you pick a card and you play it and it goes into your tableau and that's where it stays. So just a phenomenal game. Again, we talked about in episode 188. So if you want more details, go back into it. But it's one that I really enjoy the tension in, and that's Let's Go to Japan.
Good pick. Great game. That's awesome. Number 2 for me is Sushi Go. We talked about Sushi Go all the way back in episode 19, designed by Phil Walker Harding, 2013 release, with a whole lot of new releases and different releases since then. And published by Game Right Games. I don't know how much of an explanation this is going to need to our audience other than getting home from Gen Con 2024. The Sushi Go 10th Anniversary Edition was the big hit in my household. So in a house where there are a lot of games, that was the one that multiple people in my family wanted to play, wanted to experience, wanted to see what was new and different and wonderful in it. Just an awesome game where, on your turn, you're taking a card, you're putting it face down, you're passing the cards to your left. The next round, you're doing the same thing, but you're passing it to the right. And it's just a fun, fantastic game of building combos and drafting cards. And still one of my, favorite games to just sit around and play.
Awesome. Yep, that was on my honorable mention. And just like Michael put on kind of his OG drafting one, I've got mine at my number 2 slot too, and that's Seven Wonders. We talked about it in episode 28. The second edition is awesome, uses a lot of the iconography from the dual version that came out, originally released in 2010 by Antoine Bauza and Repos Production, but one I wish I got to play more. It is one of my favorite games. I love the art, the style. I love being able to. It's one of the few games where I don't have a set strategy. A lot of games there are. I don't.
Military, or
No.
that's just the 17 games I've played with you. You
No,
just
I'll
fall
do-
into
I'll
the
do-
military strategy. Military with a passive income combo?
No.
Okay.
I will go. I'm happy to go military. I'm happy to go science. I'm happy to go civic. I like them all. I usually don't do very much of the trading, the yellow ones. My brother-in-law is like, that's his go-to. But I just like seeing what unfolds.
That emergent strategy of game to game.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And it's one of the things that I think intimidates people, and certainly people in my family that I've played it with, where it's like, well, what do you do? And it's like, you just take a little bit of everything. I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, you maybe have one dominant thing, but even military, it's like, it's not going to score you enough points just to be in military.
Yeah.
And so I like that, where some people get stressed out about it. I just like, we'll see what happens. I never take this game too seriously. I never feel like it being like overly competitive. The way that you talk about Sushi Go is the way I feel about Seven Wonders. Sometimes I make great civilizations. Sometimes I make crappy ones. And sometimes you set up the player to the left without knowing it. And sometimes they set you up. And so it's just a fun game. I love some of the expansions and the way that they
I was going to ask you to talk about
elements.
that. Because what are some of your favorite expansions and we're talking about? So let some of the listeners know.
I definitely love Leaders, which was the first expansion, I believe, first or second. But it's a preliminary draft that you start with, and it does give you some guidance of what to work for. You kind of put out these leaders, and maybe you have a leader that is good at military that's going to give you extra points if you go after that type of strategy. Or so I like that as really good for new players because it gives them a kind of a way to go after. But then the expansion like Armada, which gives you another
Shipping
tracks
track,
to move up when you play certain cards, and you can get abilities. And for a drafting game, it can be very interactive with some of the expansions in a way that I don't think a lot of drafting games are. You know, normally the interaction that comes in a drafting game is just, oh, I took this and you didn't.
Yeah.
And we compare at the end of the round. Some of the expansions for Seven Wonders really, certainly like the Armada one, make things very interactive on turn to turn. Oh, he got to the island faster, or he is taxing us all, and so we've got to pay, and things like that. So just a great system. Like I said, wish I got it to the table more. That is Seven Wonders, second edition.
Awesome. All right. Number one, I'm guessing we have overlap because I haven't heard it, and I highly doubt this would slide to your honorable mention. Was it a Game of the Week in episode 102, Doug?
It was.
All right. So our number one is
It's a Wonderful
World. Yes. Designed. And I feel like this has been number one on so many of our high fives, but it's designed by Frederic Gerard, art by Anthony Wolf, publisher Le Botte de Jeu. This is a game that has a few expansions that I haven't played yet because I just love the base game so much. I don't even have the expansions to play them, but it's like, man, I need to get back and play this game more. It is a game that, again, almost 5 years since my last logged play, because time just moves, and I really do need to play it again. But it's go ahead, jump in and tell our friends what it's about and what you love about it, and I'll jump in as well.
Yeah, well, it's certainly one that would have to be number one because I think it has a very good chance of being my number one game of all time. So, of course, it would go up there that high. But in this game, you are passing and drafting, just like any other drafting game. But the crux of this one is that after you've drafted your cards for the round, you can decide to build some, or you can decide to scrap some for some resources to go towards building the ones that you're choosing to build. But the way that after you're done drafting, you decide what you're going to build, there is an order in which your buildings produce various colored resources that then you put on the buildings that you're trying to build. And so it's interesting because you can complete a building in the first phase that will then produce resources in a later phase to then help build another building. And so if you love chaining combos together and trying to create an engine that works and having those delightful moments of, ooh, now this one's going to do a red cube later, and I will use that red cube to do this. And trying to time that out is just really fun, which is why it's my number one.
Yeah, and it's my number one because there's an amazing game built around the draft. The draft really is the game. And it's not something that can be mastered or figured out because you add in a new player and the whole game changes.
Yeah.
This is a game that we are playing at game night regularly in December of 2019 and late November of 2019, and that I think really led to the Game Schooler podcast. It was one of a dozen titles that helped to lead to this show. If you look at Pandemic or It's a Wonderful World, where there are things that happen in board games where people are building skills and where you can build great community by putting down devices and just giving people an engaging experience and spending an hour together. And It's a Wonderful World was one of those games that really, I think, made that case for both of us, where it was just like, there's something here that we could talk about and share with the world, that I just wish I got back to more often. You know what I mean? Because when those experiences happen and when a game hits, you just got to appreciate it. And this is definitely one of those.
Yeah,
I've heard the solo is fantastic as well. Sorry to interrupt you there, Doug, but our buddy Dan just raves about the solo. I cannot recall, and I should know, if it's either the War and Peace expansion or the Leisure and Decadence that really brings in that solo play. But one that over time I will probably look to pick up some of the expansions.
Yeah, I've got a couple of them in a box. I don't know what they are and how they work, but they're in there. Yeah, this is one of the lists that you can get the closest to of having games that are like uncuttable. Like, we are culling games all the time, or I am anyway, and it's like,
I am too.
That these are some of the last on the list that would ever leave my house.
Yeah.
So it's certainly a mechanism I enjoy. As far as some honorable mentions, Michael mentioned a couple of them, but Medieval Academy is a great one that just got reprinted, actually, which is drafting cards to move around a track, and some of them are races, some of them are majority, things like that. Ohanami, we talked about in episode 96. Neom, I believe it's called City of the Future, something along those lines, is a game of drafting tiles to build and add to your city.
Fun little one.
Which is cool. And then 3 Chapters was another one that we just talked about a couple of weeks ago. Any other ones that you wanted to highlight?
I just kept it at 5 because it was going to be 20 or it was going to be 5.
Yeah.
So I think you covered a lot of them. Leaving 3 Chapters off the list was difficult, but highlighted at the beginning of the show. So highlighted a few weeks back.
Yep. All right. So that is our show. Want to remind everybody to subscribe to the podcast. Follow us on X at GameSchoolerU. Join the Discord, gameschooler.com/Discord. We'd love to have you there. It's a great community. And yes, Michael.
And thank you to all the people who are contributing over in the Discord. It's always nice to just click in and see what's happening. Just so many positive stories and posts. And we just really appreciate the people that keep that community going.
Yeah, go there, share your awesomeness. Next week, we are going to be talking about Australis. And thank you so much for spending the last hour or so with us. We truly appreciate it.
Now get out there and keep gaming.